The cradle accord had governed the inner systems for 412 years. It was not a government. It was older than government. Before the coalitions, before the trade lanes, before any species had left its own atmosphere twice, the cradle accord had already existed 9 species who called themselves, without irony, the Elder Circle. They preferred a simpler word among themselves. Gods, not worshipped, not prayed to, just older and stronger and undefeated for 412 years in every war they had ever chosen to fight. Their fleet had never lost a system it wanted to keep. Their diplomats had never signed a treaty they did not write the first draft of. In 4 centuries, exactly 1 species had ever refused a summons to the Accord's court and lived to speak of it afterward, and that species no longer existed in a form anyone would call independent. The court itself sat on Threshold Station, a ring built from the bones of a moon the 9 had disassembled during the Accord's founding, as a demonstration. It was still, 400 years later, the largest artificial structure in known space. Petitioners were required to arrive unarmed. Petitioners were required to kneel before the first word was spoken. In 412 years, no one had ever tested what happened if they didn't. Humanity had been part of the wider galactic community for 11 years. The summons named 1 representative, a human named Arlen Cade. The Accord's clerks had pulled his file twice, because the first read produced a service record that did not match a being who was, by every biometric marker, 34 years old. 2 border conflicts. 1 quarantine breach that Cade had apparently ended by walking, alone, into a hostile colony, and walking back out 3 days later with its garrison commander under arrest. A footnote, unverified at the time, claiming he had personally negotiated the withdrawal of an Accord client fleet from a system that was not, technically, the Accord's to hold. The verification had come back confirmed on all 4 points. Cade had not attached an explanation to any of them. He had not requested that any of it be read into the record. When the summons arrived, he packed 1 bag, checked in his single sidearm at the door as required, and knelt when he was told to kneel, exactly as instructed, exactly on time. He had not been given a reason for the summons. He did not ask for one. The court chamber held the 9, seated in their traditional half-circle, and beneath them, arranged by rank, the delegates of 40 client species who had come to observe. Humanity's presence on the agenda was, officially, a routine review, a formality performed every decade for species newly integrated into Accord space. Unofficially, everyone in the chamber understood what it actually was. It was an audition, and the examiner was Vesic Thal. Vesic Thal was the youngest of the 9 by 300 years, which still made him older than every human city currently standing, and he had built his standing within the Elder Circle on being the one who asked the questions no one else wanted to ask out loud. He introduced the matter of humanity's continued sovereignty, the way certain members of the Elder Circle introduced matters they had already decided the outcome of, which is to say, with the timing and tone of someone who had rehearsed the phrasing in private more than once and enjoyed doing it. "Before we grant humanity permanent standing," Vesic said, and the chamber's ambient murmur went quiet the way rooms go quiet for people who are used to being listened to, "I would like the representative to answer something." Not a formal question, a curiosity. Several of the assembled delegates smiled. It was the particular kind of smile that appears in rooms where a hierarchy is about to be enforced in front of witnesses, and everyone present already knows which side of it they are standing on. "Your species is 11 years old to us," Vesic continued. "You have fought, we are told, 2 conflicts of note, so how many gods has your species defeated?" The question was not a serious one. Everyone in the chamber understood it was not a serious one, including, most of the delegates assumed, the human kneeling at the center of the floor. It was a joke with teeth in it, the kind that established, permanently and without appeal, exactly how small the newest species in Accord space actually was. "That's a fair question," Cade said, in the tone of someone who genuinely thought it was. Vesik's smile widened by a fraction. He had expected silence or stammering, or, best of all, an attempt at a clever human joke that would land badly in a room of 900-year-old diplomats. "Do you mean the Cradle Accord specifically?" Cade asked. "Or every self-declared god my species has encountered since we started listening to the wider channel traffic?" The chamber did not laugh. Somewhere behind the Nine's dais, an Accord archivist, an old, quiet being named Saren Voss, who had said nothing since the session opened, went very still. "The total," Vesik said, after a pause that was a fraction of a second too long. "Let's say the total." Cade said a number. The number was 3. The silence that followed did not arrive all at once. It arrived the way a wave arrives, first among the delegates closest to the human, who understood immediately that the number had been said without a flicker of performance in it, and then outward through the rest of the chamber, species by species, until even the Nine's dais had gone still. Vesik Thal's smile did not disappear immediately. It held for a moment, the way an expression holds after the person wearing it has already stopped feeling it, out of habit rather than belief. "Explain," he said. It was Saren Voss, the archivist, who answered, not Cade. He rose from his seat behind the dais, and for the first time in the session spoke. "Since your species' arrival 11 years ago," Saren said, "I have kept a private file. I did not raise it before now because there was no discussion topic that warranted it. There is now." He opened the record, and the chamber's central display filled with the first case. Case 1. A minor deity cult on the border world Kessendrine, worshipped for 6 centuries by a client species as the literal architect of their sun's stability. A being that had, in fact, been an ancient orbital engineering platform left running long after its builders died, maintaining the star's output through automated systems its worshippers had never been permitted to examine. Human survey teams, seeking nothing more than a trade route, had cracked the platform's access protocols within 4 months, out of simple curiosity about an old signal. The god had been a machine. The machine had been switched off for maintenance. The cult's high priesthood had surrendered the platform's control codes to the human survey team rather than admit to their own people what had actually happened. The footage was not staged the way court presentations usually were. It was raw. Priests in ceremonial dress, standing in a control room full of humans in work overalls, handing over a physical key. Case 2. The Thren Ascendant, a being that had ruled a sovereign fleet state for 200 years as a literal incarnation of its people's afterlife, feared and obeyed without exception, until a human diplomatic aide named Priya Aconquires, sent to negotiate a minor trade dispute, noticed during a routine medical scan of the Ascendant's public appearances that its vital signs never varied, not once, across 200 years of recorded footage. It was, she reported, a life support and broadcast rig operating a puppet, run by a council that had outlived 7 incarnations of the god they publicly worshipped and privately controlled. She had not set out to expose anything. She had simply asked in a private meeting why the readings looked wrong and watched the council's own translator go pale before anyone answered. By the third case, Vesik Thal was not smiling. Case 3. This one, the archivist noted quietly, was the Accord's own. 9 years ago, a Cradle Accord client system had petitioned for military intervention against what its government called an unkillable sky tyrant, a being that had, for 300 years, demanded tribute from every settlement within its territory, immune, by every prior record, to every weapon the client species possessed. The Accord had denied the petition twice, citing resource allocation. A single human freight pilot, delivering unrelated cargo and unaware of any of the political context, had been forced to make an emergency landing in the tyrant's territory during a storm. He had spent 11 hours repairing his ship's hull plating. During those 11 hours, out of nothing more than professional habit, he had rerouted a portion of his ship's own power core to stabilize the local grid, and in doing so, without meaning to, disrupted the field generator the Sky Tyrant had used for 3 centuries to project itself as something no weapon could touch. It was once exposed an old man in an old suit. The Accord had classified the incident and closed the file. Saren had kept a copy. By the 8th minute of the presentation, Vesic Thal was not watching the footage anymore. He was watching Cade, with the expression of someone doing a calculation that was going to take considerably longer than the remainder of the session to finish. Cade did not speak during any of it. He knelt where he had been told to kneel and watched the evidence with the rest of the chamber and said nothing at all. Beat 6. The closing exchange plus final image. Vesic Thal rose. He did not address the chamber. He crossed the floor toward the exit, and at the threshold he stopped without turning around. 3 isn't the number that matters, he said. It's that none of them meant to. Your species doesn't hunt gods. You just keep asking why the readings look wrong. He left without another word. No confrontation, no further questions, just the sound of the chamber doors closing behind him. Cade rose from his kneeling position, unhurried, and reached down for the single object he had been permitted to bring into the chamber, a small, worn multi-tool that had belonged, according to the file no one had bothered to read aloud, to his grandfather, a mechanic who had never left Earth's atmosphere in his life. He clipped it back onto his belt. Saren Voss approached him quietly, away from the rest of the dispersing chamber. "You did not mention any of this in your own record," Saren said. "Wasn't relevant," Cade said. "Wasn't trying to prove anything. Just fixed what was broken in front of me." Saren looked at him for a long moment, then returned to his desk, opened the Accord's permanent standing register, and beside humanity's entry wrote 3 words. 3 words.